Hello, everyone, and welcome to the world of Eyes of Pearl. It's my world, and I'm so happy you're here. Okay, so tonight we have a wonderful guest, but then again, all my guests are wonderful. But this guest, he is a man of many talents. He is an author, he is a radio personality, and he has his own magazine. So please give it up for Mr. Keri Singleton. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you. I should thank you so much for having me on the platform. It's really an honor to be on your platform. I appreciate it. Thank you so very much.
Well, thank you. Thank you for gracing me with your presence. I mean, we've been Facebook friends for a while, and I've
Yeah,
been following you, and you just been doing big things, big things, and you just never stop.
I have always had very big dreams, and so I just try to um, manifest them and live them without any ceiling or boundaries. I just, I'm always, I think I would like to think of myself as a creative person, and so I just like to create. And yeah, I'm just a little guy doing big shoe things, I guess. I don't
And you want to know something? There is nothing wrong with dreaming big. It's like the saying goes: if you can dream it, you can do it.
know. Absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
So how did these dreams start? How did these dreams begin when you were a little boy? Like have you always had big dreams ever since you were a little boy?
I think so. I grew up in Boston. I was born and raised in Boston, in Roxbury, home of New Edition and Donna Summer and Guru, and some of those musical greats. Um, my mom always encouraged me to she never um, had me believe that anything was out of my grasp, and so that's how I was raised. And I feel like yeah, I think I always had big dreams. Even when I was in my early teens, I was in a dance group. When New Edition came out, they were huge, and they were definitely loved and embraced in their home neighborhoods. You know what I mean?
Right.
Everybody, wanted to be New Edition or something to that effect. So I was in a dance group that was modeled after New Edition. And even then, like, it's just a kid, doing dance steps on the sidewalk. I always envisioned bigger things. I think I was like maybe 12 years old then. So I definitely always had, I'd like to think that I had dreams of always wanting bigger things. I used to have in our house in Roxbury, I used to have a model city of New York. Because I was always into architecture. So I had a
Mhm.
Lego city in my closet for 10 years. And today I'm told that was my storyboard. I just didn't know it. But
Wow.
yeah, I always had dreams of, it had trains and buses and people and skyscrapers and everything. And I used to look at it every night. And so yeah, like I said, today I've learned that was before we called them storyboards. That's what that was. I also had a room full of posters of all my favorite celebrities. And so again, I think all of that kind of was like encouragement to some degree for me to do what I do today.
You know, I listen to what you're saying, and I'm guessing you're a Gen X kid, right? Or what year were you born?
Oh, 1972.
Oh, definitely a Gen X kid.
Yeah,
Definitely. Okay,
yeah,
so I'm 1980. I'm like the last of the Mohegans.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
What do they
you
say about what do they say about Gen X? I mean, we always hear about Gen Z, and good lord,
know, yeah,
they'll,
that's all
yeah,
we can say about them.
yeah,
But about Gen X kids, like yourself, we're very resilient
yeah,
because for one thing, we were raised by baby boomers,
right,
and they, we it's like they wanted to have us, but they didn't want to see us, if that makes sense.
Yes,
So basically what we did was that we invented games, we played
right.
outside, and when the street lights came on, it was time to bring the butt home.
Exactly. And I also want to add, we endured a lot of different things. Like, I wasn't born and raised in New York City, like I said, but growing up in the East Coast, I know you're from New York, the New York, New Jersey area. Like the East Coast cities of Boston and Philadelphia and New York and Baltimore, Washington, they were rough. They were dirty. Even
Absolutely.
I remember like stray dogs running around in the streets. Our black neighborhoods, our black and brown neighborhoods were in bad shape. And I
Yes.
think about these kids today, like you all don't know what a ghetto is. You really don't. I mean, the element may be the same, but there may be crime. But you all don't know. I mean, I remember growing up, and right around the corner, abandoned buildings everywhere. You know, so yeah, resilience. We had a lot of different, just things were different. We didn't have poverty was different, even though a lot of our parents didn't allow us to necessarily see it if they could help it. I never knew I was poor growing up. Neither did my mother with her parents. But we grew up in very different environments, very raw and gritty environments. These kids today have no idea.
They don't. They don't. And I'm sorry to say, but they don't. I mean, even though they have different problems like we did, but
Right.
I can remember being 6 years old, walking walking to school. And mind you, I went to a Catholic school. So I'm going to school, and on the ground I see crack on the
Right.
ground
Right.
from people getting high from the night before.
Yeah.
And yes, the abandoned buildings and like these like the drug addicts and the base heads, they hung out in these abandoned buildings,
Right.
right? And I came and see New York was on the verge of being bankrupt.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I remember. Yeah, it was bad. The subways were. I mean, it's just very different environment. And again, I don't. Poverty is poverty, but with a few, there are some cities that are still in pretty bad shape in this country. Gary, Indiana, Detroit, Philadelphia, Baltimore. But for the most part, it's not as bleak as it was. The projects are gone. The towering housing projects, the big cities, those are no more. We have them in New York City, but everywhere else, Chicago, Detroit, they did away with them. So I just think that the kids of today, they're spoiled to a degree. You just don't know. And so I guess to bring it all back, yeah, I came from a generation where we really had to make, our own way in a lot of ways. We
Right,
didn't have the advantage of social media to become
right,
social media stars and all that. You
right.
actually had to have talent. You know what I mean? And you also had to be able to have that talent seen by somebody that gave a damn. So
And
it's
it's all and authenticity.
yeah, exactly.
Authenticity. See, we were all about the authenticity, and
Right,
and like for example, hip hop. It is not the same anymore because when we were growing up, it was all about authenticity,
right.
all about authenticity.
Yeah,
And see, you have guys Grandmaster Flash, who was known as the mad scientist, which I
right,
love. He was known
right,
as the mad scientist because he created all these turntables. Now, if it not had it not been for guys like Grandmaster Flash, there
right.
wouldn't be any DJs.
Yeah, but
I
you know
mean,
what?
granted, it'd be one, but he set it off.
You made a very important point in your sentence. He created, and I think that's one of the big differences between our generation and generations that have come, ahead of us. We created. We did not carbon copy. There's a difference.
That's right.
So you had to, if you were going to break into the entertainment industry or pretty much any kind of creative industry, you had to be able to create something that had not been created before, or at least create a different version of it. You know, today, today it's all about doing the exact same thing as the next person. There's no creativity, individuality does not exist, and there's no desire to want to be an individual because everybody, that there's it's different. So yeah, obviously I came up in a time where we had to we were going to be a dance group. We had to have our own album. We had to figure out ways of what separated us from the next dance group in Boston. What did we
Mhm.
do different? And I mean, it was like that everywhere, man. So yeah, I think being a person that came up in an era where people really, really wanted to be as different from the next person as possible, at least in the entertainment industry, helped me. Because
Mhm.
today I don't like fads at all. If I see somebody wearing something that I think I might want to buy, I'm not buying it solely for the reason that I don't want to look like the next person.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
And see, fads don't last, and people don't seem to understand that fads don't last. You
right,
want to get if you're gonna buy something, get something that you know that's gonna be timeless.
right,
That's gonna be that it's gonna be constant.
right.
Now, let's talk about okay. Did okay? So, like I said, you wear many many hats. So,
Like this one.
what was the like that one? What was the first hat that you wore? Was it the author hat, the radio hat?
It was definitely the author hat. When I was 9 years old, there was a writing contest in the Boston Herald um, for Halloween. And so the contest basically extended an opportunity for kids in Boston, of I guess a younger age at that time. This would have been like in the 80s. Uh, to write a creative, again,
Mhm.
creative poem about Halloween. And I wrote a poem called, I still remember the name of it, Boo and Simon Sue. And it was a poem about a ghost that was terrorizing the hood, or
Oh.
the ghetto as we used to call it. So, my mother's an awesome writer. My dad was an awesome writer too. And I think I get my writing talents, humbly speaking, from my parents. So
Okay.
anyway, I wrote a poem. I can't remember the lyrics. Don't ask me to do that. But I wrote a poem. It wasn't a poem. It was a short story, I should say,
Okay.
about this ghost that was terrorizing the hood,
Mhm.
and it was one of many that was selected. And I remember, because back then the newspaper mattered. Um, People actually read the newspaper. People actually read. Um, it got picked, and so I remember seeing my name, Keri Singleton, age 9, in the newspaper. And at age 9, seeing my name in the newspaper and the story that I had wrote, um, that was it for me. I felt like, wow, that's the earliest memory I have of having a love for writing. So then I remember writing some short stories and submitting them to Walter Dean Myers, who's a very prolific black writer, and blindly, I was 9, and he actually wrote back.
Oh
And
wow.
I do remember this though. He was critiquing the short stories, as any great author would, and being 9, I was heartbroken. I thought that the critique was he didn't like it. My mother had to explain to me,
Yeah.
do you realize that this man wrote you back and he wouldn't have wrote you back if he didn't. And so kind of that was the writing bug. That was when the bug for me started. And I in the back of my mind, although later on I wanted to be an architect, that was a big thing for me. I love skyscrapers. I wanted to design buildings, and I love architecture, but my math was terrible. So I would have had very
Yeah.
pretty buildings that fell down.
Yeah.
But yeah, the writing thing was definitely my first love, absolutely.
And I have to say that writing came late for me.
Hmm.
Um, writing like I have to say that for me, writing was like a calling for me.
Hmm.
Writing had I mean I had no if you were to tell me that I was going to be a writer like 10, 15 years ago, I would have
Hmm.
said, yeah, right. Because I never would have thought that I would be a writer. But I am a writer, and I understand that this was a calling for me And the reason why this I say this is a calling because you know I don't have a story to tell. I have
Hmm.
stories to tell. I
Right,
have
right.
multiple. We have multiple stories to tell that people can relate to. Like
Yes.
I know with my first book, um somebody told me, "Wow, I can relate to this character that you wrote." Like
Uh,
yeah, it's very powerful how these characters can speak to the reader.
right.
And
Exactly.
see us, and I'm speaking author to author,
Hmm.
we can we have this power to weave these stories so that people can feel like, I don't, even though this person is a fictional character,
Correct.
this person is speaking to me.
Right.
So it's like we can speak for those who cannot speak, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And it was a very personal relationship with my first book. So my first two books were novels. My third book was a poetry book. My first book came out. Again, it's a novel. These characters are fictitious, and the fact that I had people, because I did a book tour, and I did book signings in different cities, and I would, go to the signings and have people say, you know, I loved your character, or I hated your character. Nobody, I don't think everybody said that, but there were other characters. They not the lead character per se, but to have people talk about my characters as if they were real and they're figments of my imagination was fascinating. And the relationship between author and reader is I can't even explain it. It's really dope because the 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 reader feels like they know these characters even though the characters are fictitious when you're writing fiction, and it, it's a connection that I really can't explain. I love going on book signings, and because of COVID, of course, the poetry book couldn't have a promotional book signing tour.
Mhm.
And the poetry book, of course, is poems about myself, so that's very personal. That would have been a very interesting book tour. But yeah, when you're right, so when people read your books and they relate to your characters, it's a feeling that I really can't explain, and I know that you can relate because again, you're an author. And but it's a great connection, and again, writing professionally came later. Again, me being 9, 10, 11, 12, and writing poems, and then later on writing songs. Becoming a published author that didn't come into my life early 40s
Yeah,
as a professional writer.
yeah.
But yeah, it's been a journey, and I think of all of the hats that I do wear. If one were to ask me which do I value, it's been asked before. Which do you value the most? Being a radio host, an author, being the president of a magazine, the host of a TV show, being an author, easy.
Okay, so tell us about the TV show.
So Sessions Cafe TV show, we've been on a bit of a hiatus lately. Um, But what I wanted to do is, after the radio show had been on for about 7 years, it's 9 years old now. But
Mhm.
after the radio show had been on for about 7 years, a lot of people had encouraged me to do television, and I had a little stint at Kerry's Corner TV show a couple back in 2016, I think. But that was just like an offshoot of the radio show. It was basically doing the same thing that I was doing on the radio, just in the street, interviewing people and things of that nature. I didn't want to do something that was the same as the radio show. So
Right.
Sessions Cafe, whereas the radio show focuses on people of interest, whether they be celebrities or aspiring celebrities or something to that effect. Sessions Cafe TV show really kind of focuses on um, stories uh, by people who might not otherwise have a platform. So in the case of the radio show, I'm interviewing recording artists and actors and things of that nature. With Sessions Cafe, we're interviewing the homeless guy who lived in a tent in
Right.
Philadelphia, who's
Right.
now a radio show host himself. We're interviewing, and Dino Ward was the father of one of the lone survivors of the 1985 move bombing in Philadelphia. So we had the
Wow.
pleasure of interviewing him. We did a two-part special on him, and we actually got an award for that particular episode. And so the TV show is more, again, to reiterate, it's more about interviewing, I like to say, interviewing extraordinary people with extraordinary stories who might not otherwise be considered extraordinary. So that's what the TV show is about. We've released a couple of episodes. We've taped God knows how many episodes. But just because of COVID and our platform has been weird about getting our shows aired because
Hmm.
they have stayed closed throughout the pandemic and remain closed.
Hmm.
It's been weird to get them out, so I think we're gonna just resort to putting all of the episodes out on YouTube so that those stories can be told. Because now they're like 2 years old, no
Hmm.
less fascinating, but I think they deserve to finally be heard.
And you're absolutely right. I think everyone has. I think everyone has an extraordinary story to tell.
Yeah,
Everyone has,
everybody.
no one is better than the other.
Right,
Everyone has an extraordinary story to tell, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent,
right.
or a mix of all three.
Right, exactly. And so, like I said, the TV show, when we were looking for people to interview, like I said, we interviewed a guy who who was once incarcerated, who now co-owns a gym. We interviewed another guy up in Westchester County who, during the pandemic, decided to open up his own business, brewing coffee. And you know what I mean? So I wanted to tell the stories of people that seem ordinary, but actually who have extraordinary stories. I'm with you. I believe every single person on this planet has a story to tell, and that we can learn from every single person on this planet. If only we, open up our ears to listen and really absorb people's stories. I think we would all be able to enrich ourselves better that way.
I agree. I agree. And if people would stop being so closed minded, and stop and only thought about their opinion and only their opinion, and just listen to other people, and maybe learn from each other and exchange ideas, you know the world could be more into fruition than ever.
Mhm. There's a saying. There's a reason that the Creator, whether you call him God, Allah, Buddha, etc., there's a reason the Creator gave us one mouth, but He gave us two ears and two eyes, so that we could listen better and see better and talk less.
Right. Makes perfect
Yeah.
sense. Makes perfect sense. So, let's talk about the radio show. I believe you just got started with this radio show. So, how is that coming?
No, the radio show has been on for 9 years. As of
Okay.
April, as of April 30th, we celebrated our ninth year on the air. What we just launched, so we've also been syndicated on different networks. We're syndicated in Northern California. We're syndicated in Chicago, Houston, in London, England.
Wow.
Did I miss anybody? Probably. We've been syndicated on a number of stations over the years. But most recently, last towards the end of last month, meaning April, we got picked up by a station in Phoenix, Arizona,
Oh, wow.
called WUBI. So that's the newness. We've actually been on the air, like I said. We started the show launched April 1st, 2013, and we've been on a variety of different networks over the years. But currently, we air Wednesdays in California, Northern California, Thursdays in Phoenix, Arizona. On Fridays, we're in Chicago and in London. Um, on Saturdays, we're in Houston, Texas, and on Sundays, we're on a mobile app. So, yeah, we're trying to expand, get into different markets, and it's I love meeting people to a degree.
Yeah.
Because like you just said, you learn so much from so many different people, and I've been blessed throughout my life. The 50 years I've been here so far, I've met a lot of people, and I mean a lot of people,
Yeah.
and and it's even they haven't all been great stories, of course.
Of
You know,
course.
we're talking about people, but you know what it is. I've learned that you got to learn from the good experiences and the not so good experiences because there's a lesson in every single every single path that you cross. There's a lesson. So it's indicative of you to figure out what that lesson is or was,
Right.
and grow from it.
Exactly. I think it's very important that we should learn from the lessons we are dealt with in our lives because we will be doomed to repeat those lessons until we actually learn them. That's why we are that is why it is put in our path.
Hmm.
Um
Yeah. Say
and
it louder.
yeah, and unfortunately, there are some people who have this wild E. coyote disease, and I say that because I call it a wild E. coyote disease because it's like you're doing the same thing but expecting different results.
Right. He never did catch that damn bird.
Actually, he did.
Did he?
He did. I saw the cartoon where he actually caught the road runner. And you want
And
to know
what?
what happened? You
Yes,
know
I
what
do.
happened? Okay, so he says you know how he has these signs where he's talking to the audience.
Yeah.
Okay, so he holds up this sign, and he's like, okay, I finally caught the road runner, and he switches the sign and he says, now what?
I need to Google that episode. I need to
So
check that out.
the
Yeah,
road
that's.
runner was like a giant.
Oh.
He was a giant, but the coyote was super duper small. But even
Uh-huh.
though he caught the road runner, he's
Right.
like, I finally caught the road runner. Now what?
Hmm.
I'm like,
Lessons,
dude,
lessons to
really?
be,
I'm
lessons to
like,
be
really?
learned, lessons to be learned in even the animated shows of our youth. Lots of them. Mr. Magoo. I don't want to delve into that whole thing, but I feel like there were subtle lessons to be learned in even the most entertaining and seemingly innocent television shows of our past.
And
Interesting.
it's funny you say that because one of my favorite cartoons is Hey Arnold.
I never watched that.
Okay, so you gotta watch Hey Arnold. It's on Nickelodeon. It's a Nickelodeon cartoon,
Hmm.
and
Oh, I know
Hey
of it. I know the title of it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. So Hey Arnold is about these kids and they live in the inner city. And if you watch the show, if you
Hmm.
dissect each character, they all
Hmm.
have its pros and cons. Like the main character,
Okay.
Arnold, he is this he's a 9-year-old kid, right? But it's
Hmm.
like he has this old soul.
Okay.
He has a really old soul, and I think it's because he was raised by his grandparents who owns a boarding house.
Okay.
Now
Wow.
yeah,
That's pretty
and
dope.
it's like he's always helping these adults. He's
Hmm.
usually helping adults like this old school singer. Then you had this guy named Pigeon Man and Monkey Man,
Wow.
and and of course he's helping his friends. Like, well, he's helping his friends and he's helping kids like his age, like Stoop Kid. This kid named Stoop Kid that was afraid to leave his stoop. Like he stayed on his stoop, so he was
Mm.
trying to get Stoop Kid to leave his stoop.
Right. To broaden his horizons.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you have this other kid named Chocolate Boy who did nothing but eat chocolate all day. So he's like, why are you always eating chocolate? So he had to get the root of the problem. Like he had this like Chocolate Boy had this nanny, that rewarded him every when that he would she would reward him with chocolate whenever he did a good thing. So when he went away, when the nanny finally went away, that's all he ate was chocolate because it reminded him of her.
Did he grow up to be diabetic, man?
I know, right?
I did, but it's under control, so I'm good.
Good. But yeah, check out Hey Arnold.
Okay.
Um it's on if you have Hulu,
I
check it
do.
out on Hulu. Check it out on Hulu. But it's really funny. And
Okay.
if you're a city kid, which I know you're a city kid, you can
Hmm.
relate to it
Right, right,
because
right.
the kids go to a school. They have their problems, and of course Arnold has his problems.
Right.
Like um this girl named Helga Pataki. Helga is a
Pataki,
bully. Pataki.
like the
Helga
governor, the
Pataki.
former governor. Okay,
Yeah, I know, right? So I don't think he was going for that angle, but anyway.
I'm sure. Because yeah, there wasn't much that inner city kids could relate to Governor Pataki.
But she was really bossy and she's always mean to Arnold, but
Mm,
she secretly was in love with Arnold. Like
okay.
I'm talking about like she like she had locks of his hair. She had like she built a shrine in her closet.
She was a
Like
stalker.
yes.
We don't like those. And for you, I want to suggest. I'm sure you've heard of the Peanuts, Charlie Brown and his friends.
Absolutely.
Always a lesson to be learned. And I think the show, although it only had one black character that I can remember, I think the show embraces diversity because I mean they wouldn't have said it back then, but I'm pretty sure Peppermint Patty was, living
She was
an
a
alternative.
lesbian.
Yeah, I think she was an alternative lifestyle. Um, and you just had all kinds of different characters. So, and they all got along. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned in earlier television shows. So yeah,
Um,
I'm gonna look up Hey Arnold.
yeah, Hey Arnold. Yeah, I think you would like Hey Arnold. You look like that type that would like Hey Arnold. No, no. I mean,
Even though currently my favorite animated program is Crank Yankers, which is anything but
I love Crank
educational.
Yankers.
Yeah, that's like
I love Crank Yankers.
certainly not educational, but damn it, it's entertaining.
It's yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that we'll stop there. Um, so
but yeah. On Peanuts, his name was Franklin.
yes,
The black kid's
the
name was Franklin.
token,
He had a token
token.
black kid.
Yeah,
But remember, this was the 1950s, 1960s.
right. So we're lucky. Well, I say they because I wasn't born back then. I guess they were lucky to even have Franklin.
I know, right?
Yeah, because there was no Juan. You
No,
know, no, it
there,
was
there
the
was
only
no
Franklin.
yeah, and there were no Asian characters.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Which,
So.
by the way, guys, this month is Asian slash Pacific Islander month.
Hmm.
So just want to put that out there.
Yeah. I'm what I'm not, I haven't eaten. I'm gonna be frank. I don't eat Chinese food at all. I haven't had Chinese food since I was 17 years old, and that's not gonna change. But I do like Thai food. So shout out to all the Thai restaurants. Yay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 We have a Thai restaurant here. It is amazing.
Yeah. It's like a mixture of Japanese with it's like it's tastes almost infused with some kind of South American cuisine. Uh, um, Thai food, I love it.
Um, Speaking of which, I'm a huge fan of Bollywood. If you follow me on Instagram, I'm a huge fan of Bollywood. In fact, I have like two stories dedicated to like Bollywood. Like,
Wow, shout out to India. I also love me
yes,
some Indian food.
hell yeah!
Yes. Mm. And
Shout out to South to the to the to the on the far east.
yeah,
Shout out to the Southeast Asian um region. You
yeah,
know,
because let's not. I think too many people get it twisted that are geographically uh, handicapped that Asia isn't just China and Japan.
right.
India is in Asia. The
That's
Middle
right.
East is in Asia. Russia, most of it is in Asia. So the largest continent on the planet is Asia, and there are a lot of different cultures. Like I said, I don't do Chinese food. I don't, and I won't. But I love me some Indian food. I love me some Bengali food. Bangladesh used to be a country. Used to be a part of India, but it's seceded. They have a
Right.
different little. Their flair is a little different.
Yes.
Obviously, it's very similar to Indian food, but a little different. So yeah, yeah. Shout out to all the Indians and Bengali people, and the Middle Eastern people. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. My my first I'll put it out there. My first Bollywood film was entitled Kuch Kuch Hota Hai, and let
Okay.
me and I don't know I forgot what the translation is, but I think it describes a feeling.
Okay.
And it's a love story. It's a sweet little love story. Granted, it is a unrealistic. It's a sweet unrealistic love story between three people. Three people. There's a guy. There's a guy and he likes this girl, but
Hmm.
he has a best friend who is a girl. Now they're all in college, and the girl who's the best friend has a crush on her best friend, but the best friend doesn't has no idea that she feels this way. So
Hmm.
he ends up, you know, going with the girl, marrying the girl, and they have a daughter. Tragically, um, the girl that he got married to, she passes away from cancer. So what? Yeah. So before she died, she wrote a letter. Well, she wrote I guess she wrote a letter to her daughter on how they met and her father's best friend. So basically, she wanted her daughter on her eighth birthday to look for her father's best friend
Hmm.
so that they can get married because she was no longer in the picture. She
Right.
like there are some spouses who would ask another person to be like, okay, I'm not gonna be here for long, but I want you to marry my husband or I want you to marry my wife. And that's how that was.
Wow. Okay.
So she got her daughter to um to find the father's best friend.
Hmm.
They find each other and they realize and the girl the woman has always had feelings for her best friend, but she was engaged.
Right.
So but eventually she just when she was about to marry her fiance, the it was like they her and her best friend got married and the fiance understood, like, okay, well, I get it. You two got history, but we all know that that wouldn't be realistic.
Right.
Like I said,
Right.
this is a sweet, unrealistic story.
Exactly.
But it's very sweet, and I looked at it with subtitles, of course, because it's in
Of course.
Hindi.
Yeah. Hmm.
But ever since that movie, I have been hooked on Bollywood movies, Hollywood movies. That's like the southern part of India. That's like Tamil and another language I can't pronounce, but yes. So shout out to the Bollywood and Hollywood industry for giving us these wonderful, wonderful films throughout
Yeah.
the years. I mean, we're talking like back to 1950s.
Yeah. You're right. There's definitely a history of big films coming out of Bombay, now known as Mumbai.
Yeah.
Yeah, in India. Great culture there. I definitely
Awesome.
would like to visit Mumbai one day. After I
Yeah.
go to what's that city that everybody goes to now that I want to go to because they have the tallest building in the world?
Oh, Dubai. I
Yes.
always want to go to Dubai.
Yeah. For the architecture alone, because I'm big on architecture. One of the many things I love about New York City and Chicago, my second favorite city,
Right.
is the architecture. So yeah. Shout out to global and cultural enthusiasts whose minds span beyond the borders of their cities, states, and their country. Shout out to
Absolutely.
those people. So
Absolutely. And of course, I think the reason why we feel this way is because we lived in cities that was immersed with many cultures.
right. Right. Yeah, I've lived in my whole life. I've lived in four different cities. Born and raised in Boston, but when I was about 6 years old, my parents separated, and my mother and I moved to Houston. And
Hmm.
then we moved from Houston. We lived in Philadelphia for a year, and we moved back to Boston. And then, as an adult, I moved to New York City. So I've never lived in a small town, a small place. Boston was the smallest city in terms of population that I've ever lived in, and Boston has 600,000 people. So that's the smallest city I've ever lived in. You know, and one of the things that I love about New York City, and there's a long list, is the fact that there are so many people, 8.5 million on paper. I
Yeah.
stress on paper because a lot of people we know there's a lot a lot more people that live in New York City than filled out those census forms.
Yeah.
Um, but having all of those people and all of those ideas, and that's what makes the city a great city. All of that diversity and those different views, and that's why no offense to anybody that lives in a small town or even a suburb, but I couldn't do it. Currently I live in the least populated part of New York City, and that is Staten Island. And quite frankly, I mean, it has this, I've been here in Staten Island since 2013, so I've got accustomed to the more laid back and quiet aspect of this particular part of the city, but I miss the hustle and bustle of Brooklyn and Flatbush and the Lower East Side of Manhattan, and you know what I mean, Harlem and stuff like that. I've never lived in Manhattan, but I've lived in the Bronx, I've lived in Brooklyn, I've lived in Queens, I've lived in Staten Island, and the city is filled with diversity. And so when you travel, you get to see. I mean, I've never been outside of the country. I've never been outside of the United States. But for my birthday in March, I went to Puerto Rico.
Nice.
Um, and aside from aside from what is my most favorite thing about Puerto Rico, the weather, because I love me some heat.
Hmm.
I went by myself for my 50th birthday, and I
Hmm.
just immersed myself in the culture and the sounds and their subway and the colors, and I think it's so important to be able to do that. Everywhere I go I want to ride the subway, a because I love trains, and b
Right.
because when you ride a subway in a city, that's where you find the best representatives of that city, meaning that's where you find real New Yorkers or real Chicagoans or real people from San Francisco. you know you go to, the tourist sites are fine and I enjoy them too, but I love to see what, how do real people from San
The
Francisco
real
act.
New Yorkers.
Yeah, right.
Real New
So,
York.
right. So I found them on the Puerto Rico subway, and that was pretty interesting. So, yeah, Dubai, I want to visit. Um, I definitely want to visit Brazil. I'm fascinated by the fact that Brazil is the largest black country outside of Africa, and I love Brazilian food.
Yeah,
I
I want
definitely
to
want to.
visit Brazil as well.
Oh yeah, I definitely want to visit. I love the culture. I love the food. I
Yeah.
also want to visit the some of the western coastal countries of the continent of Africa. So Ivory Coast and 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 just a lot of the countries around Ivory Coast. So because I want to be able to see where the slave ships left from. You
Right.
know. So
I would like to, because I consider myself to be mixed. Like, I have Middle Eastern roots. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
what country, but I do
Okay.
have Middle Eastern roots. Um, like I look at my daughter, and she can pass for Middle Eastern or she can pass for Hispanic, easy.
Okay.
But
Wow.
but she's biracial. She's half
Yeah.
black and half white.
Mm-hmm.
But she can pass for Middle Eastern or Hispanic.
Okay.
Um, I also have roots going back to Denmark.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Um,
Did you take that history? I mean that DNA thing that they got?
I didn't, but my daughter did,
Okay. I
and
think I
that's how.
wanted.
And they do it, and I guess they do it from the mom, and
Yeah.
that's how I knew that I had Middle Eastern roots.
Okay.
Now
Wow.
I've always knew I had Danish roots because my grandfather, his name is Bjarnson.
Okay.
I don't know any other black person with that name,
Right.
so
Right.
it
Right.
has to be a Dan. It has to be a Danish. A
Right.
Danish.
Right. Uh,
Excuse me.
bless you.
Thank you. And I know I have Caribbean roots, going
Mm-hmm.
back to BI, British and US, and I'm black.
The Virgin
So
Islands.
I
Yeah.
consider
Okay.
myself to be a complete mutt.
Most of us, those of us of African descent, um, who are not directly from Africa that live on this continent, we certainly are a mixture of, I mean, a variety of different cultures. I mean, I know that I can only trace my roots back. My sister's much better at it. She's done the whole DNA tree and all that other thing. I know that I have on both of my um, maternal grandparents were from, I mean, North Carolina. Okay, that's not tracing it back too far. But I also have, in the not so distant past, people, relatives from Canada. I assume they came from Africa and went to Canada. Obviously,
Mhm.
they're not they're African Canadian people, you know.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I think it's important that people embrace all of their cultural mixes, and I'm gonna take that test. Am I afraid of what I'm gonna find? Not afraid, anxious, I guess. I mean, I'm very, very proud of my African American lineage,
Right.
and I mean, super. Like I go to the African American Day Parade every year.
Oh,
Like I'm
nice.
wearing, yeah, I'm that guy.
You're
Um,
that guy.
African American flags in my house. Yeah, I'm that guy. But so yeah, like, I'd like to find out, where I come from. What are the different uh, ethnicities that make up who my family currently is? That'll be interesting.
That I mean, yeah. And it's funny you mentioned PR because my neighborhood, Spanish Harlem, East Harlem,
Yeah.
El Barrio, however you want to call it,
Mm-hmm.
it was a mix of Italian and Puerto Rican laced with black. So
Mm-hmm.
I was immersed with the Puerto Rican side,
Mm-hmm.
definitely. And I tell people that I loved living in that neighborhood because I was immersed with another culture that wasn't mine.
Right.
And that's how I learned Spanish, even though I learned the bad words
Right.
first.
Right.
But
Right.
I learned Spanish. I would like try to immerse myself in the culture by watching watching Telemundo and Univision and watching all my telenovelas and all that other stuff. Um, but I loved living in Spanish Harlem, and
Yeah.
I would love to visit Puerto Rico one day, and I'm so instrumental in the fact that we should not make Puerto Rico a state. We should
Mm-hmm.
keep it as a country because it was already a country.
Right. Right.
It was already established.
Right.
So
Right.
why are we met? Why is the United States messing with it? Why is
Well,
this?
I think a lot of Puerto Ricans also. Well, I mean, I'm not an expert on Puerto Rico, to be sure, but I do know that, like, right now it's a territory. There are benefits to being attached to the United States politically, but then there are the the fact that they're not technically a state, there are things there are benefits that it's kind of like they're in limbo. You know what I mean? Like they
Yeah.
would get more funding. You know, I'm not a Puerto Rican. I don't live in Puerto Rico. I don't know. You know, if I lived in Puerto Rico, they could use a couple. They could use some improvements. I mean, the infrastructure in terms of electricity, like electricity going out
They're
on the
still,
island.
they're still recovering from the hurricane.
Yeah, that's a thing. If they were a state, then they would get more economic support. And then in being a state, what do you lose?
Mm,
They'll tell you when you go to the island. I mean, it's interesting. Puerto Ricans in New York City and in the United States are very different than Puerto Ricans on the
absolutely.
island. And I
Absolutely.
learned that when I went there. They're very different in a myriad of ways. And one of the things that they're different is they'll tell you Puerto Ricans in the United States. I mean, obviously, I haven't met every Puerto Rican in the United States, but my experience has been a lot of Puerto Ricans in the United States, even many that have never even been to Puerto Rico, they want to claim Puerto Rico and this is my island and blah blah blah. Like Puerto Ricans in Puerto Rico will tell you they're Americans. The Puerto Ricans in New York might want to distance themselves when it's convenient from America. Puerto Ricans in Puerto Rico,
When
they'll
it's
tell you
convenient.
we're Americans. Like, don't be confused. So I don't know.
Yeah,
But
I don't know either. I mean, that's a whole different
yeah,
discussion.
yeah,
But
very
my
different though. They're oh my god, night and day
they
based on
are
my experiences.
they are,
Yeah.
and
So.
I mean, I'm not Puerto Rican either. I don't have a drop of Latino or Latina in me, and I've
Hmm.
never been to Puerto Rico either. But I just feel that you know, looking at the history of what Puerto Ricans have gone through, like being guinea pigs for birth control,
Hmm.
and the fact that Christopher Columbus came to that island and pretty much just like destroyed these people
Yeah.
who just minding their business,
So let's be honest. He destroyed every Caribbean island he touched,
He
and
did.
none more so than the half of Hispaniola that we call Haiti.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, he did a job on those Caribbean islands, and I don't really want to go off on a tangent about the culture of the Caribbean, but what I really don't like about the Caribbean is the division between Spanish speaking Caribbean people and non-Spanish speaking Caribbean people. The fact that Hispaniola is divided by two countries, the Dominican Republic and Haiti, so many people don't get that. Dominican Republic is not an island nation. Haiti
No,
is not an island nation.
they
They're
share an
two.
island.
They share an island, and the fact that they're so different, and the fact that the Dominican side of the island treats the Haitian side of the island with such brutality and animosity, it's sad. It's sad that you know when we think of West Indian people in
Hmm.
this country, we think black. Dominicans are West Indians. Puerto Ricans are West Indians. The West Indies are a collection of islands that stretch from Trinidad all the way to Cuba. If you live in any of those islands, you're considered West Indian.
Right.
But Cubans and to a greater degree, Puerto Ricans and Dominicans don't want to embrace the term, and it's because of one reason, and that one reason is that the term West Indian often uh, you think of black, and there's definitely a anti-blackness in Cuba, uh, and Puerto Rico, and certainly to a higher degree in
That's
Dominican Republic. But another story.
Yeah, that's another story.
Yeah, yeah,
And I would just say that I think it's rooted with the Europeans.
yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah, the
That's
Spaniards.
why it's so divided because of the Europeans.
The Spaniards. I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna retract. Nothing annoys me more, and this is because I did very well in social studies when I was in high school. I used to love social studies and geography and stuff like that. The only people on this planet that should be legitimately calling themselves Spanish are people from Spain.
Spain.
Mexicans, you're not Spanish. Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, Cubans, uh, people from Colombia, stop it. You're not Spanish. And whenever somebody walks up to me and says, "Ooh, I know this Spanish person," I'm like, "Are they from Spain? Because if they're not from Spain, they're not
Right,
Spanish. Just because
right,
you speak Spanish, like, hear me out. Because you speak Spanish doesn't make you Spanish. When is the last time you've called yourself English?
exactly.
People
But
from Haiti don't call themselves French.
uh-huh.
You no, that's the language you speak. Puerto Ricans, you are not Spanish people. And if you ever went to Spain, they'd be the first to let you know you ain't Spanish.
Well, let me just say there's probably people who have said there's probably Latinos have said that they are Spanish,
They're
but
wrong.
right, you're absolutely right. But somebody from Puerto Rico or Colombia or Mexico, they'll tell you, no, I'm not Spanish. I'm Mexican.
Okay.
I'm not Spanish. I'm Colombian. I'm
But
not
okay.
Spanish. I'm Puerto Rican.
Okay.
They make it perfectly clear. They're like, we may speak Spanish, but we're
You
not
speak
Spanish.
it. Right. Right. Spaniards, people from Spain are European and they look nothing. They look like people from France, their neighbor, or
Hmm.
Portugal.
Hmm.
But yeah, whatever. I think that that's a lot of people say that because again they want to distance themselves from their African roots, and people in the Caribbean, in the Spanish speaking Caribbean countries, are real good about that. They like to distance themselves from their African roots. Not everybody, because I went to
Right.
Puerto Rico and it was beautiful African art and statues everywhere. But you come up here to East Harlem or to Washington Heights, they ain't
There,
trying to hear it.
there are some people that will
Yeah.
distance themselves from
Hmm.
their African roots. I
And
totally agree.
and
And
they
I'm like,
darker than
damn,
me.
right. And I'm like, damn, like you have African roots, boo.
Right.
Even though your skin is alabaster, you got some African roots.
Right. The fact that I can go to a Dominican restaurant in Washington Heights, which I did about 2 weeks ago, and get black rice that tastes exactly the same as the black rice that Haitians make. Hello.
Hmm.
Your music, your hair, your dance, stop it. You're not Spanish at all. But
Right.
anyway, on to another topic. What are we talking about?
Okay. So it's been a very interesting conversation with you,
Yeah,
but
appreciate you.
we're gonna have to wrap it up.
Okay.
But what is or do you have any parting words for us?
Of advice, yes. Secrets to success. Although I mean, I'm not rich. I live in Staten Island in a decent neighborhood, and you But then, what is your definition of success? Ask yourself, what is your definition? Whatever your definition of success is, let's use that, right? Whatever your definition of success is, I think, as I'm still learning on my own journey, consistency. People, be consistent. If you don't know the true definition of consistent, Google it because people don't look up the dictionary anymore. So Google it. Google what consistency is. Um, I would also say persistence. Two different words. Be persistent. Be humble. Network. Be willing, especially if you're trying to get into this industry, whatever arm of the entertainment industry you're trying to get into. Um, Humility is very important, although it's rare. It's
Hmm.
important.
Absolutely.
Um, and be mindful of that ladder. The same people that you see on the way up the ladder are the same people that you inevitably will see on the way down. And you should treat everybody with the same respect, whether they be the janitor or the CEO of a company. You should treat them the same because you can learn from everybody. Other than that, um, I don't know. I'm not perfect. I'm still learning. I'm still walking in my own experience. I'm learning to try to love better, although
It's a battle.
the battle,
It's a battle.
the battle. But and I, if nothing else, love the person in the mirror. No matter what society tells you about how you're supposed to look, or how you're supposed to walk, or how you're supposed to act, love yourself. So we recently acknowledged the oh, I'm gonna be is it the 35th anniversary? I can't. Oh my God, I can't. 20th anniversary. I'm sorry, of Lisa Left Eye Lopez's passing. She
Yes.
was one of the members of TLC, and I had the pleasure of working with TLC during the promotion of their first two albums when I was young because I worked for
Cool.
Arista Records.
Cool.
Um, Unpretty. What I decided to do last weekend is as as a honor to TLC is watch all their old videos, and of course the standout videos, No Scrubs and Creep and Ain't Too Proud to Beg, but I got and Waterfalls, but I got a chance to watch the Unpretty video and really listen to the words again for the first time in probably a couple of decades, and love yourself, really love yourself entirely. Love your hair, love your nose, love your heart.
Mhm.
It's very important to love yourself because believe me, we all want to be loved. Nobody's going to love you until you learn to love yourself.
Exactly. Exactly. Very profound. Very, very, very profound. And I really hope that those who are looking at this, they take heart of what you just said. Because a lot of people want to say, and I'm guilty. I'm guilty of saying
So
this.
am I. Yeah.
And they be like, oh, my like from a woman's perspective, oh my boobs are too small, or oh my boobs. Well, if they do have big boobs, I understand that because it caused that problem. So I understand that. But if your boobs are too, or if you feel your boobs are too small and you want to go and get breast implants, hmm. I mean,
Yeah. Ask yourself, too small for who?
exactly, exactly, exactly. Because God don't make junk.
Mm-mm.
God don't make junk. Remember that.
Right. Right. Yep.
All right.
We're all individuals and we need to embrace our individuality.
Exactly. Exactly. Because otherwise, you be looking like sending the clones, like a bunch
Right.
of clones.
Right. Exactly. Right.
Okay, people. That concludes our visit from the world of Oz Pearl. I would like to thank the incomparable, the amazing, the
Oh,
the oh so talented Keri Singleton for gracing our presence.
thank you for allowing me to be a part of your platform, and the honor is definitely mine to share. Thank you, Aja, for giving me an opportunity to talk to you and for giving me great insight. Again, this conversation, like so many others, uh, has given me a lot to think about. A lot of the words that came out of your mouth were definitely came in here and stayed here.
Wonderful.
So, yeah, that's what it's all about, sharing.
Likewise, my brother. I am just soaking it in, soaking it in. All right, y'all. That includes the world of Aza Pearl. It's my world. And thank you for stopping by. Bye.